Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark, and with me back this week, we got John, who we knew was going to be here. John, it's good to have you back, buddy. Knew you wouldn't miss any Lord of the Rings content like ever. You'd kill me
Yeah, and
otherwise.
I'm happy to say, like, I'm so glad that this was the stream I was coming back to.
hmm
This weekend is much better than last weekend.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. And we have returning guests, notable Tolkien extremophiles. Aaron and Dan. Dan is the voice of Geekdom, the host of the Voice of Geekdom channel, and Aaron is a friend to us all, known for her deep, deep love of these films. And like, you should hear her and John go on about the scores of these things. It's crazy. I'm just like, oh yeah, this song, and I'm going whatever.
Hardanger Fiddle.
Yeah, the question was over under on how many times the Hardanger Fiddle is mentioned, and I was like, I don't know, if it were just me and John, I'd say like at least 30, but since Steven keeps a tight rein on things, like maybe we'll go with the over under is like 10. So yeah.
Right.
We're honestly just lucky that Sam isn't here. Because it's Ice and Fire Con. Like, I practically did a meet cute where, like, he was going on about the Hardanger Fiddle, and I said, "You got to meet Aaron."
Yeah, and then I just literally ran up to him and was like, Hardanger Fiddle. So yeah, it's a brand at this point. So yeah.
I mean, I assume most of you know Dan's channel already, but if not, Dan, will you tell us just a little bit about what you do over there on Voice of Geekdom?
Sure, absolutely. Occasionally, I make videos. It's been a bit dry recently. I haven't done much. I've been a bit burnt out since Rings of Power finished, to be honest. But I'm getting back to it. We actually recorded something together recently, which I'll maybe talk about later on. But yeah, I do videos on the Silmarillion and Tolkien lore, and do podcasts and live streams, and yeah, it's the Voice of Geekdom.
Right.
Next year, I want to start doing non-Tolkien content. I want to start doing other things like slightly more often. Occasionally, I've dabbled in other things, but I was thinking very seriously about doing Dungeons and Dragons lore content.
No, I don't know anybody who would be interested in that. Sorry.
You really shouldn't mention that around Steven. It's a sore point. He doesn't really care.
Not his bag, no. Yeah, so keep it to yourself for now, but I'm thinking about doing other things. But primarily, I'm a Tolkien YouTuber.
Right. And we love you, man.
Good one.
I love your videos.
Yeah, so if you are not subscribed, do it now.
Right. Yeah, so full disclosure, everyone, I am sick I have a lot of congestion. I have a cough. It's in my ear. I'm dizzy. I have tinnitus. I feel like crap, but I'm also highly medicated. So the captain is drunk at the wheel today.
That's our favorite.
Fortunately, here let's just do this. John, you're in charge, which really seems fitting given the nature of the material we're going to be discussing. I'm really happy to be here. I feel like crap. I've felt like crap for days. This is it's nice to just be having a conversation with friends. But if I disappear, it's because I have to go do something. Like, I'm probably going to go make hot coffee because it sounds so good. And I just got so far behind. I didn't get a chance to make it. You guys know me. I'm always sitting here with my coffee while we stream. But I love you guys. I really wanted to be a part of this conversation. So I'm here. Like, I'm physically here. My spirit is willing. My flesh is a little weak. We'll see what happens. But yeah, John, why don't you just, here's the wheel, you drive. Besides, like, these two guys are going to have better stuff to say about this film than I will anyway. So thank you both for coming, by the way. I don't know if I said that, but
Thank you for asking.
guys. I'll start though. This is my favorite of the three. I'm not prepared to say it's the best. but I am prepared to say that it's my favorite. It has, in my opinion, the perfect amount of Legolasing. You know, we get to hear about what his elf eyes see, which is a funny thing. The surfing on the shield moment was like that's not. Oh, like that was the perfect amount, in my opinion. But yeah, I love this movie unabashedly. I love them all, obviously, but this one does is it's my favorite. The Battle of Helm's Deep is just epic in a way that I don't think anything else in the series quite touches. And you get Eowyn, all that Eowyn stuff. You get a lot of the Rohirrim stuff. Like, yeah, it's what's not to love. Anyway, that's my piece. John, to take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, when I was watching it today, I realized that like as much as I'm sure last year I said that Fellowship was my favorite, and I guess that still holds true, but it really depends on which one I'm watching at the moment because I honestly like each film is different and it has its own unique qualities, so it's always been hard for me to pick out my favorite, so I really won't try. Needless to say, I mean, if Fellowship is my favorite film of all time, then and Two Towers and Return of the King would tie for second place.
Right.
For piece 1.5. So
yeah, it's like it's all. That's why I usually list it just as Lord of the Rings. But now I was also thinking about the fact that what's strange is I couldn't quite remember like the circumstances of my going to the theater to see this. I remember Fellowship and Return of the King, but what I do remember is the sense of epic scale that I felt while I was watching this movie. Like the fact that you start off right where Fellowship, leaves off, and then when you get to and then by the end, it's the victory at the Battle of Helm's Deep, and Frodo and Sam are, about to end, almost ready to enter Mordor with Gollum. This is the movie that I kind of use as a reference point every time I talk about the power of cinema over like the longer form storytelling of television, because so much is packed into this 3 hours. You sit down in the theater and you go on this insanely, epic journey. So,
But with a lot of different perspectives in it too.
yeah.
There's a lot of characters to keep track of, and yeah, Christine to Never Never podcast mentioned the Ents. I forgot all about the Ents. Love me some Treebeard.
I love that there's an anecdote in the commentary where
You guys know that Viggo Mortensen broke his toe. Never mind.
I did not know that. This is I have not heard of that, just like I haven't heard of, sorry, this is gonna be my one Keira Knightley reference in the whole thing, but I have not heard that she was only like 5 years older than the little kid in Love Actually. I've never heard that anecdote before.
Right. Did you know?
No. But God, where was that? I'm trying to remember where I was leaving off. Kira thoughts derailed me.
Big surprise.
Yeah, of course. I can't remember. But this movie is phenomenal, and I love it to death. And we'll get into all the stuff. Like, it's hard to believe that 20 years ago with this movie was. I mean, we got a taste of him in Fellowship, but this was really the entrance of Andy Serkis as Gollum. Because what we saw in Fellowship was just sort of them testing it out, and it wasn't really the motion capture. There you go, Dan. And so just to see that, I was when I was watching it today, I was still like, oh my god, this looks phenomenal. And like I still remember sitting in the theater with his first scenes being like, what am I seeing? Is this really happening in front of me? So
Kartik says, John,
Boo, boo.
no, never.
Terrible pun. Terrible.
Not out. Just you need to take care of your thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, I'll relinquish the mic.
Kartik is as big a fan of the bad pun as I am, so be
We'll have to
warned.
see.
Be warned.
Yeah, and what Guilty mentions there, like, I'm less surprised now than I was 20 years ago that he didn't get an Oscar nomination for this, because I know how the I've had more experience watching the Academy Awards, and I know how they work, but it's still such a terrible shame that he never got recognition for Gollum.
Well, they don't work. The Academy Awards are a mess.
Yeah, they're terrible.
This ain't about that. We don't need to go down that road at all.
No.
But anyway, so I will relinquish to either Dan or Aaron. I mean, we'll just start at the beginning. Like, what were you thinking going into this one? You know, coming off of Fellowship, and what were your impressions of the movie?
Yeah, I think I was very excited first time in, of course. I suppose I'll just talk about how I feel about it now, because it's hard for me to remember exactly how I felt about it at the time. It was a long time ago now, but this is also my favorite of the three movies. I think as a movie, it's probably the best piece of cinema of the three movies, I think. I've heard really good arguments for Fellowship being a better adaptation, and I think maybe that's true. But I like Two Towers more as a movie. And yeah, we get the introduction of this little MVP. I love Gollum. I love Andy Serkis as turn as Gollum. It's one of the highlights. One of my favorite characters from the books. Yeah, I think the movies hold up really well. All of them do, but this is probably my favorite. Helm's Deep scene. It's not really one scene. It's a sequence of scenes, but it's simply the best battle sequence ever filmed. The perfect amount of Legolas is quite a sort of nice way of describing it in a way, because there was a little bit too much of Legolasing in the Battle of Pelennor Fields with the elephant. Whereas this was, kind of, it was elves doing.
Well, they weren't commenting on the Legolasing of it all yet. Like with Return of the King, I think that was definitely a response to, to everybody going, "Oh, Legolas and his stunts," and of course, in typical Peter Jackson fashion, he's like, "Okay, now I've got to take that to the nth degree."
This comment that Stephen has just highlighted here from Kate about my Gollum voice. I'm doing a Gollum voice in my upcoming video on Gil-galad, because there's a Gil-galad, a Gollum quote where he talks about the Battle of Dagorlad, which I did a whole bit in my upcoming video, which will be on Patreon soon, but probably will be on YouTube next week. Or maybe not, because I'm busy next week, because there's a whole Christmas thing happening. But yeah, something to look forward to. But she's heard it already, so.
Yeah, no, I actually, I'm trying to think, when was it couldn't have been Tolkien reading it, because that was earlier in the year. But for some occasion, I was going back and reading the Helm's Deep chapter of Two Towers, and absolutely, it's kind of because I haven't done a full reread of the books in a while, actually, and it's kind of surprising when Helm's Deep is only one chapter. In the book, it's definitely a different animal in the films.
Yeah, I did a video on that chapter for reading day, actually, the year before last, where I just did a dramatic reading of the last few pages. at Helm's Deep.
My apologies. I didn't realize I was muted. You just lost all of my sparkling commentary. Like the precision with which I delivered the timing of my jokes. I'm sorry.
I felt it in my heart, though, Stephen. So, yeah.
This is Stephen operating at about 65%, okay? I can't. I was going to say something. I can't even remember what now. But no, it's gone. Continue.
All right.
I really am like basically stoned right now, y'all. I don't know. You could probably tell.
Yeah. Steven's having a lot of the end drop.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with my frame rate. My wife's frame rate.
So, Aaron. So, same to you. Like, what do you remember of your experience? Seeing the movie the first time, and I know, like, your response obviously was glowing to it, but just tell us what you remember.
Yeah, I mean, because I've said before on these other sort of streams on your channel and stuff, I had not read the books, and I was sort of blown away by Fellowship. So, like, I didn't know what was going on. And so I was like, obviously, there was this extra layer of like anticipation for me to see how the story progressed from Fellowship, So I was just really, really excited, sort of midnight, release excited and stuff like that. And I think I definitely saw this one in the theater the most times. Like, we're talking like a ton of times when it was out. And then, like, I don't know if anyone remembers, there used to be like the $2 theaters or whatever that had like really old stuff, like that had been, 6, 7, 8 months old. And so I went to see like a bunch of times in the dollar theater too. So so I was obviously I was super pumped for it. And then I loved it even more after seeing it. So it's funny because I think in, like, if you told me in theory, like, you're going to meet all these new characters, I would have been like, no, I don't want new characters. I just want to like focus on the ones that because we have, the 9 and already. And then, plus the smattering of others like Elrond and Galadriel. But then, you get all these like new people coming in, and instead like usually when things break apart, like it's a little bit, I don't know, sad for me, I guess, but instead this just led to like a lot more, like you said, there's Gollum, there's Éomer and Éowyn and Theoden, and all these different people that come in throughout the story, and I thought that was really awesome. So it is also my favorite of the 3. I think it's just the best balance between like the quiet moments and the action moments, and you guys have already said sort of Helm's Deep. Like, my thing about Legolas thing though, like, this is, because I remember watching the director's commentary, there are a couple of bad CGI moments in the whole trilogy, and they're all around Legolas. Like, this one is like him, like the battle on the way to Helm's Deep when he tries to swing up on the horse, like in front of Gimli, and it's so jarring, like, CGI wise, but also like the physics of it are just totally
I've always understood the physics argument. I've never really had any issue with the like quote unquote CGI effects of it. It's just you can tell it wouldn't be possible. But aside from that, like in
the commentary, Peter Jackson's like, yeah, I heard there was a bunch of people like clapping in the theater when they saw that, and I was like, were they? They were. That was a weird one for me, but yeah. So no, and it's again such as obviously a very, very, very small, like not even a complaint really. It just makes me laugh every time that I'm like, why did he go that way to the? Okay, no, all right, never mind. Cool, we're gonna get it back into this other battle scene, which is also awesome. P.S. Like, I feel like it kind of gets lost with the Helm's Deep stuff, but like with the wargs coming in and like and all that kind of stuff, it's neat, and it's sort of the first like hint you get of like competing with like Gimli competing with other people and stuff like that. They don't really lean into that very much in the theatrical version, but I think it's really neat, and so I like that battle as well. But yeah, obviously my girl Éowyn is a big plus here for me. So I have my I Am No Man shirt on today. So but yeah, so it's a great movie, and I every time I watch it, I'm blown away by how great it is. So I know that's like a sort of pithy thing to say, but I love it. So I think I've definitely watched it the most times of all the three of them. So
it's interesting what you were saying about you know, the fact that this is a different experience because the characters splinter off, and how that actually ends up being a good thing with this. And I actually remember when the movie was out, or when it was coming out, that was one of the big things for my group of friends that hadn't seen the or hadn't read the books and didn't know what to expect. They were like, oh wow, this isn't just a retread of Fellowship of the Ring. They're, like, it's, the characters are off doing their own things, and it's almost, it's a war movie now instead of, the journey of the first one. So much to the point that some of them, I think, were actually a little disappointed when Return of the King wasn't as equally different from the prior films. But Two Towers just goes off in such a different direction, and I think that serves the movie really well. And yeah, sorry.
Really, like, for Merry and Pippin, like, this is, in the first film, they're basically just idiots. And then by the end, they figured out that they're in over their head. They're less idiots by the end of the first movie, but they have this realization that, like, this is so much bigger than I can comprehend. And, like, this is the film where they learn to utilize some of the gifts that they do have to overcome that. Their small stature, their sneakiness, their, when he manages to take the brooch off and throw it on the ground, it shows a little bit of cleverness. The way that he convinces Treebeard to take him past Isengard. All of that really does show those two idiots from the first movie. And when you look at it as the parallel to fighting in World War One, which Tolkien can say it's not an allegory for that all he wants, I'll never believe him. These lads from the countryside, and they're off to fight against the Kraut, and God save the king, and they don't realize what they're getting into. It seems like a grand adventure early on, and then you realize, no, it's cold, and the food is terrible, and they got taken as prisoners of war for all intents and purposes. But it really does show the maturing of them, and how the set of circumstances that they were placed in. Yes, they were over their heads for most of it, but they were continually trying. Especially, I feel like, especially Merry. Pippin maybe later on, but especially Merry. He comes to this place where, like, he tells Pippin, there won't be a Shire. If we don't take care of this problem, there won't be a Shire. And he's even, like, getting angry and shouting at the assembly of Ents at the Entmoot. How can you do nothing? It's a really powerful moment for Merry, and it shows that he has grasped the larger nature of what's going on. And I love that for this character. Those two guys are, like, probably my two favorite characters in the whole series. I love those morons, but that's not true. Sam is the best. Let's be real. But
Pippin is the one that actually has the idea to go past Isengard and to take Treebeard that way, though. So he definitely has his kind of, like, light bulb moment. And shows a little bit of initiative. Just as Galadriel says to him in the first movie, "You will find your courage," and that was kind of his moment. So they both have that to an extent. Doesn't happen that way in the books. by the way. But
yeah, I was gonna say, even though
fine.
like a lot of that flies in the face of the books, and I know a lot of people say it does a disservice to Treebeard in the end, but I have to say, like, just for pure comedy, I love that it's, you know, it gives us the moment of Treebeard going, well, that doesn't make sense to me, but then you are very small. So, you know.
Yeah, the closer we are to danger, the further we are from harm.
Yeah, it's like, in this case, I am willing to let them do that just because it's fun comedy, and you know, I think it works in the film. But yeah, no, I love the journey that they go on throughout these films, and especially, you know, we'll save it for next year, but especially when they get to Return of the King, especially like Billy Boyd has one of my favorite performances over the course of this whole trilogy. So, and I love that we still have Merry and Pippin because we have their podcast, which is a delight. So.
Yeah, you definitely need the middle part here in order for like Pippin's sort of Return of the King, like, you know, saving Faramir and things like that to make sense. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you definitely need this middle part where he sort of goes through all this stuff. It's because it's not even in the first part. It's not like that's a walk in the park. Before they're taken prisoners of war and stuff, and they did have a lot of chances to turn back and to go, you know, go back to the Shire or stay where they were or anything like that. So it is a neat. It's. I know a lot of people, Helen, don't like the ends, but
never. You know, but, well, I unfriended her.
You cannot not like the ends, but yeah. So it's there. I think their part is neat, and like you said, I like when finally he sort of manipulates Treebeard and is like, let's take a walk past Isengard and see how you feel about it after that. You know, so yeah.
You guys don't know this, but Helen was actually slated to be on the stream, but she was only going to be doing it under the conditions that we all were like burning, you know, branches, branches and stuff throughout the course. I said,
burning, you know, Treebeard in effigy.
I just don't think that's going to work.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I actually watched this movie with her the year before last in person. Last time, I think it was the last time I saw her in London. I was doing like annoying and impressions at her like all the way through the movie. It was pretty amusing.
It's her least favorite part is when the Ent, you know, ducks its head in the water, saving itself from the flame.
Right.
I love that. I will fight for that one until the end.
She was cheering for the total destruction of all the Ents. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think, you know, it would be folly, you know, in the length of this stream, because we're definitely not going to do a John Webster film style stream where it goes on for 4 hours. But so let's just, you know, we'll just continue to jump. Yeah. We'll just continue to jump around. Like, I don't know. We'll highlight Gollum for a while because we mentioned him, but like, you know, I did mention like my first reaction of seeing him, and I think it's easy to take for granted now, but this was only 3 years after Star Wars Episode 1, and comments about the actual character of Jar Jar Binks aside, we'll leave that out. But even the quality, groundbreaking as it was, I think you go back and you can definitely see a lot of the seams, and not that you can't with Gollum, but I think that the weaker CG moments of Gollum were the weaker ones back in the day as well. But I think, you know, where they really knocked it out of the park, like his first scene, and a lot of the scenes where it's kind of darker, because I think that was sort of easier for them to mask some stuff. But you watch those scenes now and they still hold up beautifully. And the fact that this wasn't just sort of a goofy fun character, it was a character who had to carry a lot of dramatic weight. And I remember I saw this with a friend of mine who was just like in complete awe of the way the movie ends with him talking about leading them to Shelob, and how freaky and terrifying that is. And they were just shocked by what they were seeing, the fact that all this drama was being carried by a CGI character. So there's no overstating how much of a sea change Gollum was. But I'll just leave it to you guys to talk to say whatever you want about Andy Serkis as Gollum, because
stop everything. Happy birthday, Wheezy.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
We love you so much. I hope your day has been amazing. So yes, happy birthday to the Wheezy Squeeze Box, the official timekeeper of Here Be Dragons. Anytime it's 4:20 in any time zone, she will let you know. Thank you, Wheezy, and I hope your day has been amazing.
Also, the keeper of some of the most beautiful chickens I've ever seen in my life. So hopefully the chickens were good to you today, Wheezy. So.
Yep.
And
I didn't know it was your birthday, but happy birthday, friend. Happy birthday. All right, where were we?
Andy Serkis, Gollum.
Yeah, can I say something? I thought it was really interesting what they did with him in general in the movies, particularly in this one, but also in the last one as well, where they kind of gave him multiple personality disorder, where he has two different distinct personalities that are at war with one another inside him. And that is a little different to the way it works in the books. I mean, there are kind of two sides to him in the books that are at war with one another, but it isn't so much of a literal personality. He doesn't have a kind of like dialogue with himself with two different aspects of his own personality in quite the same literal way. But it was a really good way of sort of getting that conflict on screen and showing that. The crux of this movie dramatically is the scene where he's arguing with his own reflection, I think, in terms of that storyline at least. And that's just fantastic. Some of the best stuff in any of the three movies.
I think what's so great about it is it's not even like they, in the third one, they do take it to that point of arguing with his reflection. But what's brilliant about this one is it's not even that, it's cross-cutting and it's just different camera angles, which I think is brilliant. And it makes you think you're looking at two completely different characters. Because every time it cuts back and forth, like it's a completely different facial expression. And I just love the way they do it. But yeah.
The way that you can tell in the books, where the way that Tolkien describes his different kind of like sides of his personality rather than like separate distinct personalities. In the books, it's like the more like the gleam in his eyes and stuff like that. It's like more kind of like subtly described, whereas in the film they had to take a different sort of approach because it's kind of difficult to portray that.
In the film, it feels like an inner monologue externalized.
Yeah,
which is, and we all can look at Gollum and hear about what he's been through and understand that he is a mentally like broken person. So it's a really good way to externalize his inner monologue, to make him argue with himself, and we'll identify, not only can connect with what he's actually grappling with, but also come to a greater understanding of just how broken he is. I thought it was, and again, different from the books, sure, but I thought it was a really great way to adapt the idea. And yeah, Gollum very creepy. Sméagol also creepy, but like the way that they managed to make us sympathize with that character, all the way up to the end of the next film too. But especially in this movie, they do a lot of heavy lifting to make us sympathize with Gollum in this movie. And Andy Serkis is a huge part of why this whole, like, well, the whole thing works, sure, but like, just he's got a lot to do, and it's I would not imagine it's an easy character to pull off. Play this little goblin gross thing and make everybody feel bad for you while being continuing to feel dangerous and threatening.
I'm not really sure sometimes if it's that, like, I at least I've watched the director's commentary and everything, but I really like agree with you, Stephen, that this is something that's like that it's like ton of dramatic tension with Gollum, like because he creates tension with Frodo and Sam and almost makes Sam look like the bad guy in a lot of ways, sort of like that Frodo's trying to be nice and Sam's still always like, yelling at him and not like accepting his help and doing all these different things. And like, as somebody who hadn't, read the books and didn't really know what was going on, I thought that was a really, like, you didn't quite know where that was going, like, is Gollum going to end up being the bad guy, or is Sam just being prejudiced, or, like, does he not want anyone, horning in on his relationship with Frodo or something? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of the way that they did it is very clever. I will say that I got a little lost, like the one of the moments isn't even in the theatrical cut; it's in the extended cut. But like, Gollum is smart creature, who he knows a lot of things and he has good reasoning skills. And like, did anyone ever try to explain to him ever that like he would have been killed if Frodo hadn't like turned him over to Faramir at that point? Like, because that seems to be like a kind of a breaking point for him. And then at the end, when Faramir like pushes him up against the wall when they're going into the tunnel and stuff, like I just, there are these points where I'm like, Sam sort of says, well, Frodo was trying to protect you, and he's like, oh, protect me, like, why don't we like kind of like tell him like this is what was going to happen if Frodo did not sort of turn you over at this point. But instead, so that just feels a little, I don't know, it feels almost a little bit hokey to me, that it's a misunderstanding that turns Gollum back to what he was before. But I understand that my view on the character is different, having only seen the movies versus read the books. You know what I mean? Because that's right. It ends on Gollum going back to, we're Gollum, bitch, and we're gonna take him to this spider. So I wish it would have been a little bit of a, I don't know, less of a sort of like misunderstanding, that because that's the way that it sort of seems, even though I know that probably in the books it's not that way. So
I mean, I get that, but at the same time, he's been motivated by the Precious the whole time. So,
I mean, I kind of looked at it as I do see the Sam moment as that's him trying to explain it, and Sméagol is completely sort of dismissive of it in that moment. I don't think further explaining it would have changed the fact that it happened, and I do think like the thing is the Gollum side is always laying there in wait, ready to pounce on anything. So I feel like if it wasn't that, it probably would have ended up being something else as well.
Sure, that's a good point.
So, but I do see what you're saying, and a lot of that just comes into. I mean, it has been a while since I've read that section of the book, so like I know obviously all the Faramir stuff is darker in the film, but as far as like the Sméagol capture, I know that happens in some form in the chapter of the book, so I don't know how that's I don't remember how that comes into play exactly, but just shows it's time for that reread. Absolutely,
it's similar in the book, but it comes off a little differently. What you don't get in the book is like an aftermath, like breakdown of Sméagol kind of like scheming in response to Faramir's abuse. Like that doesn't really happen the same way in the book, but it feels more like a point along the journey where Sméagol decides to ultimately betray them. But by the time that they meet Faramir, I think he had already decided to betray them in the books because it does play out differently.
If I may, guys, I would like to interject, okay?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to do a mid-roll right now and then bow out.
Okay.
And leave you guys to go as long as you need. I am dying here. Like, I'm literally got the camera off so you don't see me lolling back and forth.
Now, John's fully got the reins now, so this might actually go for 4 hours now.
Yeah, like, it's not going to affect me anymore. It's not going to affect me anymore. I'm going to, like, listen in and be in the chat, but I'm so out of it. I can't even follow the conversation. But I wanted to make sure we hit the mid-roll because, like, it's just... We got to make sure we thank our patrons. They're lovely human beings. And there's a lot of them. Our great worm patrons are ridiculous Ed Tollett, who I saw in the chat earlier. He was the alpha patron. We love you, Sean. Probably going to be heading home from work soon. Be safe, buddy. As well as Lord John Bronsteen the Wise. Thank you, great worm patrons. But we also have a few elder dragons in our who are patrons of our fine establishment, including the Cloaked One of the Underworld, Ryan Stavka, the Russian Quartermaster, Reflective Rambling, Arch-Maester Emma, Kate, Mistress of the House of Books, Jared Kozal, Doctor of Dragons, Lady Maura Lee of Starfall, and Lady Rita the Unbound. Thank you, patrons. We love you guys so much. Really do appreciate it. Next weekend, next Sunday is Christmas Day. I don't think I've got anything like just planned, but I might just hit go live and talk to whoever shows up. If people are here, a lot of people will not be here for Christmas Day. I get it. I'm not sure about what we're going to do on the 1st either, but something. I will tell you on January the 8th, I'm going to have a very special guest for I Know That Nerd, and I am excited. Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, longtime friend of the channel, Sanrixian, will be doing a live stream on her Twitch channel, which she has been doing a lot of recently. And I will be a guest on that particular stream, as will this guy right here, ridiculous Ed Tollett, because she's calling in her D&D party, and I'm their dungeon master. So we're all going to talk D&D, and she's going to draw stuff live, and you can come by and make dumb requests, and you can get her to draw a horse riding a bicycle like I did.
The penny farthing was amazing.
It was, yes. Like it's been my Zoom avatar since she posted it.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's this coming Wednesday evening. I'm not sure what time. I want to say 7 Eastern. It might be 7 Central.
I feel like it might be 6, but let me look here.
Right. Oh, thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. I saw that announcement earlier today.
Yep.
She is.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. She's gonna draw D&D stuff. And it's a fun time. She's been doing these semi-regular, and she has Emily of the Eyrie, who a lot of y'all know, as well as if you know Egon the Sixth from Twitter. They're kind of like those two are like her regular quote unquote co-hosts.
Yeah, it's at 6:30 on Wednesday.
6:30
Central. The 6:30 Central, the good time. So.
Right, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 main American time zone.
I will be over the Atlantic Ocean at that point.
Well,
flying home to Nebraska that night. So.
Right. I mean, it is what it is. A lot of people are traveling, but that's what we're doing. I get to be a guest on Sandry's channel. She was the first ever guest on this channel. And now 3.5 years later. Isn't it crazy that it's been that long?
Yeah, I wasn't. I don't think we had met yet when you did that stream. But,
no, we hadn't.
Yeah, but I have gone back to watch it, and yeah, no, it's a great stream. If you guys haven't seen it, go back to check it out.
But Dan, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything coming up?
Yeah, sure. So as previously mentioned, my channel is Voice of Geekdom on YouTube, and currently I am working on a sort of about a half an hour lore video on the complete history of High King Gil-galad, the High King of the Elven Kingdoms in the Second Age, who defeats Sauron in the War of the Last Alliance, who appears in the movie trilogy for about half a second. But obviously he was in Rings of Power. So yeah, I'm doing a video on him. I am opening that video out with singing. So I'm singing the Gil-galad song from the books, but I'm singing it in the style of Bill Nighy from the BBC radio drama. So that'll be the intro to that video. I can't really sing, to be honest. So don't look forward to that in any way. It's just I wanted to do it, and I did it. And so that'll be coming out some point fairly soon. It would have been out already, but I've been a little ill myself actually last week, particularly, and so I'm a little better now. But I am also getting ready to travel, so hopefully it'll be finished before I leave.
You're
recently
to the North Pole for Christmas, right?
I'm sorry?
Said you're flying to the North Pole for Christmas?
Pretty much, yeah. And flying to certainly a cold part of the world, yeah. Mm-hmm. And another thing that I do want to plug, which also isn't going to be released just yet, but has been filmed and I have started editing it, was Stephen and I filmed a session of the One Ring RPG, which is it's like a D&D style tabletop role-playing game system based in Middle-earth, which is set sort of between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And so Stephen played Paladin Took, Pippin's father, and
as a young man, though.
Yeah, before Pippin was even born, and so he was a juvenile kind of version of Pippin's father, who we don't really directly meet him in the books, although he is mentioned from time to time in the books. And so I also filmed that with my friend Nikki, who some of you might know is the voice of Melian on my Silmarillion series. And a friend of hers also, who is a podcaster and a writer, and he was pretty awesome as well. So that'll be coming out in January at some point, and I'm hoping to film more episodes of that in January too. So that should be fun. Hopefully, we'll have a few other guests make guest appearances as well in that series as well.
It was fun, y'all. It was fun. We had a good time.
So it was good. Yeah,
watch that when it comes out. Even if you're not into the gaming, just we had a good time. Y'all should watch it.
Yeah, you don't need to know anything about the system particularly. It's just improv essentially. A little bit different. I've never done content like that before, so it was a little bit. What's the word? It was an experiment basically, and it was fun. So I'm editing that now.
Yeah. Aaron, is there anything at all you want to?
Yeah, when are you starting your channel, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm it's just around the corner, guys. No,
I'm wearing people down.
Yeah,
Aaron is gonna review. Her channel is going to be reviewing craft beers or something like that.
not beers, but possibly vodkas or something like that.
There you go. There you go.
But the
no,
fact of that.
I was gonna say I am leaving for New Zealand in 12 days. So for a month in New Zealand. So very excited about that. So that'll be fun. I follow my Instagram, LuckyMac44.
What's wrong with the Old Zealand?
Yeah, that's the Flight of the Conchords joke, right? The poster that says New Zealand better than Old Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
The Flight of the Conchords, Murray's posters in his office are always my favorite. So
yeah, that's it right there. We expect video blogs.
Oh.
Yeah.
On the YouTube
I'm sure
channel.
We're going to get some amazing pictures. Guys, I have reached the end here.
That's all right,
guys. John, thanks for being an awesome co-host. Dan, Aaron, thanks for showing up and helping John not do this all by himself.
I mean, he could.
I'm trying, but I'm dragging the whole thing down now. So, and to you guys chatting, I love you, and we'll see you. I'll probably just come on next week and just BS with anybody who shows up. But until then, I am gonna stay in the chat. But y'all, I'll see you. Peace, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you guys later.
All right, bye, Steven.
Bye.
Feel better soon, man.
I will.
I know he says he's going to watch, but I'm saying good night, Steven. Have a nice nap.
At least his retention of what he remembers will be very low. So yeah.
So I guess there was nothing else for the mid-roll aside from honestly, Aaron, Kate and Laura starting their channel has only emboldened me, and I will not rest until you've started a YouTube channel.
Kelly and I holding out here, so
yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump back into the movie wherever, whatever it is we're talking about. Let's talk Howard Shore, Aaron. It seems like because there's a little something about this movie that has a certain musical element that speaks to you, and but seriously, I mean, the Rohan music, just it's such a big part, I think, of what makes that storyline and the people of Rohan so compelling to watch, because it is something different from the rest of the music that we've heard thus far. And you get that great, when Theoden is brought out of his, out of the spell, and you get the full rendition, of the Rohan theme. I still remember watching that in the movie theater. I specifically remember one time I think I was going to see something else. I don't know why I would go see anything else while Lord of the Rings was in the theater, but it happened.
Were you watching Harry Potter?
Oh God, no. Well, especially
at the same time as well.
Definitely not.
That's where my mind went.
Definitely not then. I was in full because that's the rivalry was going on, and it's no, that's kid stuff.
I agree. To be honest.
But anyway, so I had gone to see something else, and I was leaving, but I remember sneaking into the Lord of the Rings theater just for a couple minutes, just to see where the movie was at, and it was that scene of Gandalf holding out Theoden's sword for him to take, and the music going. It's so good. It's so beautiful, and I go back and I watch this movie and I listen to the music, and it's so easy to just take it in stride, but it's so amazing what was accomplished with. I'm making this into a broad thing, but I want to focus on the music in particular. Howard Shore's score for these films is just it's ruined film music for me, because I listen to it. It's just gorgeous, and the Rohan theme is just one of those great things with the instruments. So much to the point where it comes back in Return of the King, and it's like you're on full charge, and it's like, oh my god.
Yep.
So go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, you're right that it's just so different. Like a lot of it, obviously it's all different, like once you listen to it, but like sort of elves and men and dwarves and stuff, they don't. Rohan is the one that has, like I said, and a lot of it is like because of that Hardanger fiddle, like is so distinct. Like you hear that fiddle and it's unlike anything else. So even if you're not listening carefully, you're like, I know where we are, exactly where we are. Like obviously you and I have listened to these soundtracks so many times at this point that like you could play anything and I'd be like, I know where we are in that one. But you know exactly where you are with Rohan, and I don't know. I guess there are bigger, the charge down the hill, sort of in Helm's Deep and stuff. Like there are bigger, sort of more dramatic pieces in this, like the ends at Isengard and things like that. Like a lot of the stuff at the end is like these bigger, more dramatic pieces. But the one Christina was saying in the chat that like it still gives her chills, like that. The King of the Golden Hall, like that, when he takes that sword, that still gives me goosebumps every single time I hear it. But even from the very, very first time when they go in and you hear that little dun 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 dun, dun I'm like, hell yes, man, get hype. We're in Rohan now, bitches. So yeah, but that is what makes this is probably, like, again, if you like really, really twist my arm between 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3, this is my favorite soundtrack as well. It doesn't have Dwarrowdelf. It doesn't have the sort of the men's choral stuff in Moria is in the first one as well, but this one just, I think it's a lot, like there's so much on here that's really, really wonderful, but that is the Rohan stuff is the stuff that always like really, really stays with me. So yeah.
The Rohan stuff is fantastic. Just one caveat to what you've said, which I wouldn't add too much to, but Miranda Rotto's singing in Old English, I think, adds like a little dimension to the Rohan stuff as well.
Definitely. Real shame that didn't make the theatrical cut because it's beautiful.
Right. Oh, it's incredible.
I always crack up when I listen to the commentary as to why that movie wasn't in the movie, and it's either Fran Walsh or Philip Boyne says we realized that we just didn't care about Theodred enough.
Well, we don't, really.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
exactly.
He's a non-character who we never meet. But
you care about how he makes other people feel, and that's about it.
Yeah. It's part of the backstory of Theoden and so on. But it's like not. We don't really care about him. That's not the point.
That's so true, though. You're like, Miranda Otto's like, are you kidding me? I learned all this Old Norse for you to decide later, or that we don't actually care about this guy. So yeah.
She can still remember the words to that as well, which is.
I know Liv Tyler says she can remember a lot of her Elvish lines as well. So those things are obviously very like ingrained in them. So yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't know which score is my favorite. I will say of the original soundtrack albums, I think this is the best one because I think it has it's the best representation of the score as a whole of it, because like Fellowship is just this is really getting very nerdy about the soundtrack albums, but that's what we're doing. Just like Fellowship has so much of like the Ring Wraith stuff early on that I think it kind of drowns out the nuances of the early part of the score. Return of the King is missing a lot of like the big, memorable, epic moments. I think because they were probably trying to fit in as much new material as they could. Two Towers has like the perfect balance of like a lot of the best music from the film is on that soundtrack album. So, and I just remember the fact it's funny that I listened to these soundtracks so much in preparation for going to see the movies that I remember, you talk about the scene when they're first riding up to Edoras, and I remember seeing the movie and realizing that we were hearing the Rohan theme on like I think it's like brass or not brass, like on the horn or something, and on the soundtrack album it was on the fiddle. And the fact that I was able to pick up on those nuanced differences just because I listened to those albums nonstop before seeing the movies. Like, I think it's because I had read the books that I was like, yeah, I don't care about being spoiled about the music. I was like, let me obsess over every note of this.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I remember the experience of listening to those soundtracks was, it was like before the movies came out, there was this separate adaptation of the book that was done musically that I could obsess over before we actually got the movie.
Yeah. There's also just like even the battle music, like, which a lot of times, like, one of my complaints about Return of the King is that the Shelob stuff, like, it's like, sorry, this is totally unnuanced and untechnical, but it's like a lot of screechy violins, which is like really works well, like when you're watching it, but like when you're just sitting there listening, you're like, oh my God, what? No, this is so screechy. Like, obviously it takes a ton of talent to like do that kind of stuff, but that's just, there's like a whole part of it that I'm like, okay, no, I'm sorry, Howard, I gotta skip this one because it's just really grating on my ears. But like it also made me appreciate like how they managed to like convey the rest of it in not screechy violin. So yeah.
Well, and this goes to show that as much as you and I like agree on on the broad strokes of a lot of Lord of the Rings and film music stuff, when you get down to the details, we still differ, because I absolutely adore that stuff and I love listening to it on its own, and it's very like old school Howard Shore.
Yeah.
I love that stuff because it's so panicky and uncomfortable and
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm listening to these usually while I'm doing work or something, like, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, what the. No, okay, never mind. Just Shelob. So,
God, that so reminds me of my mom used to say to me when because I always wanted to play Lord of the Rings music in the car, always, which surprises nobody. But I'd like turn on the Two Towers soundtrack and it starts with all this heavy choral stuff and Gandalf falling and fighting with the Balrog, and she'd be like, "Can we just turn something lighter on?"
It's like we're going grocery shopping and all the doesn't quite fit the mood. So. Yeah. Sorry, Dan. We're off on our own little thing here, but
no, it's absolutely fine. Howard Shore did a movie recently, didn't he? Was it a biopic of Edgar Allan Poe? I kind of curious to watch that actually.
I don't know. I know he did another.
The Pale Blue Eye. That's called. With Christian Bale.
And who's the director? I know he also did another David Cronenberg movie recently, which looks like a really freaky, like futuristic science fiction movie that looked very uncomfortable. So I haven't seen it, but.
No, I'm with Cassie here. Whoa, what? How am I just hearing about this biopic? I've literally never heard of it before. So I learn something new on these streams all the time. So
yeah, like honestly, I haven't heard of it either. So I'm gonna have to go look that up.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but it sounds interesting. I might want to watch
that. But yeah, no, it's like Aaron, you and I could just sit here the whole time and go on about the score, but since you mentioned it though, that final ride of the Rohirrim down into Helm's Deep, that's another track that I listened to over and over, just with the angelic voice, and it's just like the way the instruments seem to sort of break out when the light shines in and blinds all the orcs, and it's just magnificent. So
another one of those pieces of music, like I think you said on your stream with Doug Adams, like Dwarrowdelf, where like you feel like they almost had to write a scene to fit the music, like because the music is so epic that like it feels like, okay, you had to like live up to this, you had to write this scene in order to like fit how wonderful this music is. And that's definitely one of them that does. And like again, there are some like weird, like people are always like, no, you couldn't write downhill that steep, and I'm like, I don't care. Like it's so visually stunning as well as like the music. It's definitely one of those scenes that you just watch over and over and over again and never get tired of. So
yeah, and I do also want to just say something which and I guess this is also another way of plugging my stream with Doug Adams. Please go watch it over on my channel if you haven't seen it, though I'm sure all of you have either watched it by this point or said, yes, John, we've heard you. I'm not interested. But it's something that he mentioned on that stream was because I talked to him about how like magnificently crafted this story is from like an intellectual standpoint of crafting character themes and interweaving stuff and just the way it's constructed, and he raised the very good point that it would have been very easy for like you can have all that stuff the way that character themes develop and intermingle, but it still doesn't mean you're going to have good music. And the fact that Howard Shore was able to do those things at the same time where it's this elaborately constructed score, but it also like the music is just so insanely beautiful. It's why like I was just I listened to the music more than I watched the movies. I was just listening to it the other day. So yeah, anyway, okay, I think we've waxed poetic enough about the music for now.
Publicly anyway, so yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess before we like, because we are going to get into the Battle of Helm's Deep, but I just want to talk next, like, what are some of your guys's, like, we've talked about Andy Serkis, obviously, but what are some of your guys' favorite performances in this film? Because it's such a, an amazing, large cast.
Bernard Hill smashes it, like in both this and The Return of the King, but this one in particular feels like his movie, his introduction. He has the best speeches, I think, of any character. He was fantastic. Ian McKellen's always good. Like, he's always good. Good value. We sort of start to see Aragorn come into his own, so Vigo too. And I guess, of course, Sam as well. He talking of speeches, he has that obviously really famous speech at the end of the movie, which kind of ties everything together as far as that storyline. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that being one of my, like, that's what you can do with cinema, that, you can never have a moment like that in the books where Sam's speech sort of ties everything together over the course of, like, all the different storylines feel united in that moment. And it's just got
but it's partly in the editing, isn't it? Because what
Yeah.
he's saying ties in with what we're seeing at Helm's Deep and at Isengard as well, so it's kind of like a little bit of a montage sequence while he's speaking, which you can't do in the book.
I really like David Fenham as Faramir as well. I think I know Faramir's kind of controversial because he's very different in the books than in all this stuff, but I really like him. Like, I think that he does a good, does a good job of, like, especially, again, you see there's so much extended material with Boromir and Faramir and stuff in here. And like, I really like his performance. Like, I understand again that it's like, it's very divisive, but having nothing to sort of match it up against or measure it against, like, I really like it. Like, especially the scene with them at the extended scene with Boromir and Faramir, like before the battle, and you could tell he's just really trying, and his dad is such an asshole, and like, so it also, they're like, obviously, like it's obvious that they had such a close relationship even before the extended material, sort of lets you in on what maybe that was and stuff. So I like that one, but Dan obviously disagrees. But you took most of the obvious ones, Dan. So yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, the thing is, like, I feel like I'm probably in the middle here because obviously I do know, Book Faramir and like how different the character is, but I also feel like just taken on its own, I actually do love this version of Faramir and David Wenham's performance, especially in the extended cuts. I feel like something that's really lost in the theatricals is that you get this, beautifully tragic and horrific family dynamic between.
It's missing context, isn't it? Because we don't understand his relationship with Boromir without that scene, really.
Yeah, and I actually watched the theatrical of Two Towers today in preparation for this, and as much as like I still like to say that the theatricals are great movies because those are the ones that we saw first. Like, you can feel it once you've gotten used to the extended. Like, there's sort of a bit of heart missing from that storyline, and as you say, context, because then it carries over into Return of the King. And I actually think that it's one of the really strong aspects of these movies, that family dynamic. And once you kind of that flashback scene in Two Towers is key to that. You lose that, and it just takes away from so much of it.
I will say I go back and forth on the Faramir question quite a bit. I've said this before to you, I think, but I kind of do understand why they sort of changed his interaction with the ring from the way it is in the book. Because in the book, for those who don't know, he what happens in the book is that Sam and Frodo kind of get a bit drunk with him, and Sam lets it slip that essentially that they have the ring, and Faramir works it out, and it kind of, there's a slight little bit of tension where you wonder whether he's about to sort of try and claim the ring, but he pretty much immediately says, but I don't want the ring. I would never take it from you. I would never do such a thing. And he's just wiser than that, and so it's a very different take on the character in the movie because he sees it as his chance to prove his quality as a captain of Gondor, as the line goes, and so it's completely different. And I do kind of understand that change. I get the justification for it because I think it could be seen as undermining the sort of dynamic that they've set up with the ring being this sort of like, I don't know, like radioactive isotope that they're kind of dragging around, that it's tempting everybody that comes into contact with it, and so it's for Faramir to just like dismiss it out of hand is it would be difficult to sell to a cinema audience. But the character does come off in a way where he's a bit inconsistent in the end, and so I don't know. They could have done a better job of changing it, maybe.
I mean, I think there's some writing things here that are both like, because like I think Miranda Otto's performance as Eowyn is stellar, but there's some writing choices that I don't really love. With I think I said this, and when we were talking about it on John's channel as well, like she was like, I don't know why she's crying all the time, like, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I went on at great length about how, like, feeling and caring and things aren't feminine and bad, and like this movie does a great job of having everybody be loving and caring and all that kind of stuff. But I heard the thing with the stew, and then when she walks up to him again, this isn't in the is this the stew in the theatrical version?
No, it's not.
No, okay. And the other one,
in fact, Miranda Otto in the commentary, she's like, "Oh no, the stew scene." It's
right. Right. So there's this too, and then there's the later one where she's like crying at Aragorn because Theoden won't let her go to battle, which is just
and again, which is not in the theatrical.
Yeah,
So,
and which is sort of wrong and it just a bit juvenile, like, oh, Aragorn, let me go with you. It's like, yeah, I really, really don't like some of the, but I think Miranda Otto does the best she can with the direction that she's being given, with the writing that's there for her. And obviously the producers realized that this was not great because they cut both of those things out of the theatrical version as well, so
it's like I do love the extended cuts, obviously, and there's certain scenes that I wish they had kept in, but let's not forget that some of these scenes went out for a reason. There's a reason they're not in the theatrical cut. So
right. And it's funny, the Stu one isn't quite as bad because you do get some information about like Aragorn's age and like different things like that, where you actually like get a little something else like out of that one versus the other one at Helm's Deep, where I'm just like, we should have really just left this out. Like, you get nothing here other than her being a little bit pathetic, and that was really unfortunate for me. So,
well, I remember hearing that what that scene does is it's like sort of puts her cards on the table as far as like her feelings for him, but the reason it came out in the end was that is happening a bit too soon. Like, that needs to happen in Return of the King, because it doesn't leave them anywhere to go, really, as far as that. At least that was the justification. So I try not to be, like, for myself, I'm not too critical of scenes that ended up being cut out of the movie, because they were cut out of the movie.
Sure.
So,
but yeah,
which is
not a dummy either, though. They're like, oh, she's putting her cards on a table, and it's like, if Aragorn didn't already know, it's not like she's been real subtle about her interest. Like, oh, so you're wearing a jewel that a woman gave you, huh? Where did that one come from, huh? Like, it's like they're not subtle about it before. It's not like it's a big, Aragorn's clearly knows beforehand, before she says, like, like, do you not know? And in Return of the King, he's clearly been aware of it this whole time. But like, so yeah, I don't totally buy that one, but yeah, anyway, so not to bag on my girl Eowyn, because she's my favorite character, but that was just not the writing there let me down a little bit. So
I don't think she comes off as pathetic or whingy, personally. I don't love that scene, but I don't think she comes off as like weak necessarily.
Weak is maybe not how I would put it, but
no, you didn't say that. I'm putting words in your mouth a little bit there, but
it's just it's odd. It's like going to ask mom when dad tells you no. You know what I mean? Like that, and being like, well, he won't let me go. Will you let? It's like, what are you doing here? Like, everybody's trying to get ready for a battle, and you're basically asking Aragorn to override King Theoden's decision when there's already tension between the two of them with who's in charge and blah blah blah. I mean, obviously that's more resolved by the end of the movie, but like, this is just a bad idea all around. Sort of what's Aragorn supposed to do here? He's clearly not going to say yes, you can come. So it's not really a good or smart decision, and it just doesn't come across as something that a woman of Eowyn's intelligence would be doing at this point, given the potential implications of Aragorn overriding Theoden's authority in that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I don't think you need that scene. Like, primarily, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I did want to sort of backtrack and because you mentioned a couple of performers, Dan. I do feel like, if Fellowship is Frodo's film, this is Aragorn's film, and just Vito is so good in this, and he drives in a lot of ways, but Bernard Hill again, is just so great, and it's funny because I still remember, like, when I read that he was in this movie as Theoden, I'm like, the captain from Titanic. But he's so great, and he has moments that like I love the moment when after he's been freed from Saruman's mind control, and when Gandalf is advising him, and Gandalf like puts his hand on the side of the throne or whatever, and Theoden has this like sidelong glance where he's like,
I love that glance.
He's like, dude, I've been getting manipulated.
Right.
I'm
Take
not gonna
your hands off the throne.
So that's great, and I know people, again, this goes into like differences from the book. I know people have issues with his sort of the journey that the character goes on, and he has lessons to learn, and and sort of there's not, I don't know if you wouldn't call it reluctance. That's the journey that Aragorn's on, but like he's been really affected by sort of what he's gone through and what he feels he's let happen, and so it's a bit different from the book, but I love it because then by Return of the King we get that Theoden of the books. So I feel like the character is extremely well developed in that way, and then of course his magnificent moment before the battle starts, where is the horse and the rider. It's just and again
delivering that stuff that's like makes it, because a lot of them aren't, I don't know, I know that like Denethor is sort of supposed to be more of a Shakespearean sort of villain, the way that what's John Noble plays him and stuff, but like I think it works it works well like in direct contrast to Bernard Hill, who delivers this with like such like gravitas. And so I mean just that, because it's not like, some of that stuff is a little bit hard to get your tongue around, it's hard to sort of, but like if I read that on the page, it just doesn't come across nearly like it does with him sort of saying that while he's like being armed, and it's just it's wonderful.
Well, and that brings up something else I was thinking about when I was watching the movie today, and like again, things that maybe I took for granted like back in the day because I was coming so quickly off of reading the books, maybe because I was young and naive, and I just assumed, well, of course they're going to adapt some of Tolkien's language in the script for the movie, but if you actually listen to the dialogue, it's amazing some of this stuff gets through from page to screen, because you just don't hear dialogue like this in films. It's, and granted, it's some of it is sort of modernized in a way, so because Tolkien's writing can seem archaic to modern audiences, but I think they struck a nice balance where you still very much get the flavor of Tolkien's language.
Yeah, they haven't modernized it so much as streamlined it.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There are times where they take sections of dialogue from passages in the book and put it in different places in the story in the film, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. I would say. But
I was just like,
I don't want to nitpick. So I'm not
but like when Gandalf is freeing Theoden, there's a moment where he says the words "hearken to me," and it's like, when do you hear that in modern movies? It's like, it's so great to hear that kind of language.
I mean, also just the gentlest turn down ever in Return of the King. I have wished you joy since first I saw you. You're like,
yeah.
Oh, it's so nice, but so rude.
It's not you, it's me. That's like his version of that. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're great. That's it, though. That's all. So
and that has led to all those great memes of here's how to be cool and sound like Aragorn, and like translations. I love those.
Totally, I like those too. Fool of a Took makes it on a lot of those too. I know, yeah. So yeah. But yeah, it is. Dan, I know you don't want to nitpick. I would be really interested. Is there like a specific point that you can point to that where you don't think that like moving passages to other places works?
Yeah. Actually, in this movie, there's a scene that jumps out at me for that, where it's the scene where Wormtongue is talking to. We haven't mentioned him once yet, actually. By the way, maybe we should have a chat about him in a minute. Wormtongue is talking to Éowyn, and he says something about who knows what dark thoughts you've uttered in the depths of your bower, and something like that. That passage in the book is actually, it's a Gandalf line, and so I always like scratch my head at that scene in the movie because it doesn't really make sense in the context that they place it in the movie. In the book, Gandalf is talking to, I think, to Éomer, and he's describing Éowyn's gradual sort of despair at having to care for her uncle and her sort of feelings of loneliness and isolation and so on. And so it's kind of being used in a similar way, but it's much more of a sympathetic description of how she must have felt at that point in time, in retrospect, versus the way that they used it in this was Wormtongue just coming across creepy. Was all I get from that scene, really. But we, like in the context that they use it in the movie, I don't think it really works. Like I find it confusing, probably mostly because I know where it comes from in the book.
It's also quite early in the that's his first scene, right? So it's
more or less, yeah.
It doesn't receive a lot of setup, and I don't know. It definitely does a good job of suggesting that he has what he at least sees as an intimate relationship with Éowyn that is sort of not exactly reciprocated there, but it's odd for a first scene. I would say that it does sort of,
and it's not quite his first scene.
It's not. It's his first real monologue, but it's not his first scene.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. With Éomer,
because this is actually, this is after he's kicked Éomer out of the kingdom.
Yeah.
No, I actually really like it, partly because the language is so beautiful. It's just great to hear that in the film, and I probably didn't remember exactly what the context was in the book when I saw the movie, because at that point I probably had only read the book through one time, and it's a big book with a lot of
no, they are extremely forgivable, yeah.
And so I took it as his I don't want to say his understanding, but at least his perceived understanding of Éowyn, and the way he sort of feels about her, and probably the fact that he's been watching her way too much. Yeah. And it is creepy, but it is also, it's showing sort of part of his, like, the inner workings of his mind and how he feels about her. And so, it's not the most comfortable,
It's not supposed to be either.
It's not supposed to be. So it's, but I like it. And but that's another example of where, like, even if I didn't remember exactly where it was from, I knew it was Tolkien's language, and it's just a joy to see these actors delivering that kind of dialogue, and Brad Dourif is just, God, like, he's probably one of the most he's probably one of the most underappreciated members of the cast. Just like moments like that, to that single teardrop, when the Uruk-hai, set out from Isengard. And
he doesn't have very many normal lines, though, does he? Now that I think about it, like, all of them are kind of like, you see much, Éomer. I mean, like,
that's why a lot of his lines are pulled from Tolkien, because, like, that's like, it's sort of, his character is very heightened.
Sure.
And it seems like he's always monologuing. But like, I love when Gandalf and the Three Hunters, enter Meduseld, and it's like lines ripped directly from Tolkien. It's just late is the hour in which this conjurer chooses to appear. Last spell I name you. Ill news is an ill guest. It's like I love all that's. It's just. Again,
the way he delivers it is so distinctive. We were watching this scene last night where he talks about the ring of Barahir, and like he just takes these weird pauses and this weird inflection where I'm just like, this is so great. This is such a great performance. So yeah.
My favorite anecdote about him is that he stayed in his accent for like the whole production, and then when it was over he dropped it, and Bernard Hill was like, that is the worst American accent I've ever heard, because he thought he was English.
Yep. Oh, they just do such a good job too with his whole aesthetic as well. Like his sort of like hunching posture and his greasy hair, and like, I love it. So I think.
But that's also hilarious because it's like, really, no one suspects that he's the traitor. Like,
well, yeah.
Like, look at him. I know we shouldn't judge people on their looks, but come on.
Also, Bernard Hill needs to watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because great movie.
Oh my god, that's so funny. It's like my complaint about Saruman in The Hobbit when he's like, his love of the leaf has yellowed his teeth and rotted. I'm like, really? We didn't know this was the bad guy here? So, the guy who hates weed, of course, is the bad guy, So yeah. But yeah, that's
it's like, and okay, like, and maybe I'll catch I might catch some flack for that. It's like, yes, we should have let everybody fly their own flag, and if you want to be the, because you could say that he's like the goth, member of the Rohan community, but within the context of like a fantasy, like.
It's true. His aesthetic is quite unique among the citizens of Rohan. That's true. That's a good point. So yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, he's also very. It's not just his look. He's very, he's very creepy in his.
Yeah.
I'm just saying he has,
yeah,
he has something about him that's like, more people should be like, I'm suspicious of you.
Right. Totally. That's awesome. Great character, though. Great character.
Yeah. No.
The other random performance we were talking about yesterday was I guess there's like memes about bureaucracy orc, the one whose job it is to like tell Saruman that we don't have the trees or like the power to like do any of this stuff, and like the thankless job of bureaucracy orc. I was like, I had never heard of that before, but like totally true. That guy's looking out for your forge there, Saruman. He's an excellent employee. You should definitely keep him. And he almost assuredly dies at the end of the movie. So. But I was like, I guess that's true. I'd never thought about that before. But he said it was a meme, so I was like, wow, nope, it's totally right there. So we gotta make it believable that Saruman is building this army. So we gotta hear exactly how we're damming the river and doing all that other kind of stuff. So
that just reminds me of how much I love all the orcs and their accents.
Especially the scene where they stop with Merry and Pippin, and so it's the orcs and the Uruk-hai like going back and forth, and like everyone's accent is all over the place, and it's so great. I'm like, yay, diversity among the orcs. So yeah,
we're not going no further till we've had a breather. People always mention the meat's back on the menu line, but I love that line actually.
Yeah, like I know like technically what, but I still love it.
Well, again, like, where do they get bread? Also a good question, So, like, if you really try to like look too far into the details, like Paul showed me a meme that was like, "Where are the orc bakers at? Like, who's baking this bread?" And I was like, Wow, I guess I never thought about that before. So, like,
And again, I remember seeing this movie with audiences. That line killed, you know. So
I can give you a book answer actually for where the bread probably came from. I mean, in the books, like the land of Mordor isn't actually all barren. There's like a southern area to the land of Mordor around the inland sea of Nirn, which is kind of actually fertile. Industrialized, but not like a barren wasteland. So they probably grew crops there. And so the bread was probably baked by humans who live in Mordor, essentially.
I do think we have a rare opportunity with the Rings of Power for them to establish orc restaurants.
Yeah, agreed.
That was when you said in the south of Mordor. I was like, that's the one thing that made me think was this stupid text wipe in the Rings of Power, the Southlands. Mordor. Like,
No.
Oh God.
I don't.
No, you don't say. We hadn't figured that out yet.
I really liked the Rings of Power, and that was so.
I don't want to get into.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, that's just a very brief aside, but yeah. So. Anyway, back to the.
It's my fault. It's my fault for even bringing up the Rings of Power. So, but no. Anyway.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and dive into Helm's Deep.
I was gonna say the whole end is like good because I want to talk about the Ents and Isengard as well. So yeah.
Yeah, this. I mean, you know, even though what I said, like, there's stuff missing from the theatrical version that I wish was there, but the thing that this film, I feel like it does it less well in the extended cut, but in like. I just remember in theaters, like this magnificent build up to the battle. It's like the movie keeps cranking the tension, you know, until you get to the, you know, the battle's about to start. And then you get that one arrow that fires, you know, and sets the whole thing off, which is great. It's a great comedy moment because it's like everything stops and the orc is just like, But yeah, no, I agree with Dan. You said that like this is the greatest battle scene, you know, in cinema, and I find it really hard to argue with that. It's just, it's incredible. I mean,
I love the elves coming too. I love that whole scene. The music in that is awesome. It is really really good, but it's I don't know, like you said, like they do a really good job with the tension, like all of the because there's tension even in between the three leads. There's tension with the people, who are sort of hanging around, and then all of a sudden it's like you're expecting like, okay, the battle's going to start, and instead they give you this like hope moment, you know what I mean, like right in the middle of all this, everything going really badly, like I said, Aragorn and Legolas like arguing, oh my god, this is terrible and everything's going, and then it's like, oh, just kidding, here's this whole amazing army. It's completely in contrast to these like rabble of peasants, that you have bravely sort of soldiering on here. It's just a really like I really like where they put that moment in the grand scheme of Helm's Deep, because I think it's just such a nice, like it could be very hopeless, and then they give you that hope, and then you're like, okay, maybe it is going to be okay, and like mostly it's not. Most of those people die, but like still they win the battle in the end. So yeah.
I actually, as blasphemous as this may be, like I often have to remind myself that the elves don't show up in the books because it feels like such an iconic part of the battle. But speaking of hope, like I also love the scene directly before that, when Aragorn is sitting there, and and Haleth comes up to him, and is feeling hopeless, and Aragorn has that great moment, there's always hope, and then it cuts to him suiting up, and it's just one of those great movie moments where the fist pumping begins, and then you get the elves arriving, and it's just amplified.
Just before that, you get the comedy moment of Gimli putting his male shirt on.
Little tight across the chest.
which it will never like amaze me then how quickly he gets it all set right,
sorted out
for the next scene.
Yeah. But like the rain is a really good touch, like once the battle sort of starts and stuff. But it is nice, like Hama's the one that got his face eaten by the warg, right? The warg rider. Yeah. So like I like that they sort of tie that back together, even though it's not really very obvious sort of at the beginning. So oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because the elves are kind of like it's kind of sidelined up until that point. So I know that's kind of how it's supposed to be and everything, but But yeah, I don't know. I use the "So It Begins" gif like all the time for stuff, but I do really think it's excellent. Like, didn't they say that like they filmed several different ways of him like saying that? Like, there's several different takes of like him giving different inflections and stuff, and I'm like, I don't even care what the other ones are. Like that one is perfect. So yeah.
Well, and I didn't even think about it, but you're right. I use that all the time.
Yeah,
it's sort of like. I think I've got two memes that the two GIFs that I use all the time for like, getting ready for stuff to commence. And it's that one. And then it's Heath Ledger's and here we go.
I think I used "So It Begins" for the 2020 election on election day.
Oh,
it was like, "So it begins." So yeah.
I don't want to be reminded of any election days. That's just like, although at least we're referencing the 2020 election and not the 2016.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, the battles are all really like the battle stuff is all super good. Like I love the ladders, like, and that stuff is so like creative, like how they actually show like, oh, somebody actually hit the rope of one of the ladders and it falls over, then it doesn't actually work. Like it's clear that they put a lot of thought, and I'm certainly not here to speak to how realistic any of this is, but it's clear they put a lot of thought into like the mechanics of this kind of stuff that makes it really visually interesting. It's not just the same thing over and over again. There's always like little other things going on in different sort of areas that make it fun to look at. So yeah, I mean, the Olympic torch is a little ridiculous with the orc running, but I mean, it's
the amount of times we've seen Legolas shoot people directly between the eyes,
right?
And
it's a little.
He needs like 5 shots to kill that guy.
Little unbelievable, but every time
the logic of it isn't great, but it's a good scene.
No.
I like the scene where Saruman...
Yeah, but there's so much tension in that though. It's like it just keeps being like. Is keep on running, and then the music is building, and just the way then the explosion happens and everything, and the music cuts out at that point. Like I get what you're saying, but I still think it's a amazingly executed moment.
I really like this. I really like the kind of flashback scene where Saruman is explaining how he's going to use fire to undo stone, and Wormtongue's got the candle, and he's like, Saruman is like, no.
Oh, that's
not a good idea.
Yeah, but that's another excellent reaction shot from Bernard Hill when that goes up too, like just his total like, just, and they obviously sort of like. He says, "Oh, is that it? Is this all you can conjure, Saruman?" And you're like, "No, not
even a little bit."
It's like, why did you say that? Never say something like that. But yeah, and I mean, there's just so much, amazing stuff. You've got the whole, competition between. Legolas and Gimli, and then you've got the, toss me. I cannot jump the distance. You have to toss me. Don't tell the elf.
You card. Yeah. The competition was fun, but another one of those things where you're like, there's absolutely no way Gimli won that competition, right? I mean, like, as you watch Legolas just absolutely own people, and you're like,
well, that's the thing. Like, it's much more plausible in the in the books, and I'm not quite sure what the number is in the books, but it's not that.
It's the same. It's 40.
Is it the same? But like in the movie, you're seeing Legolas fire arrow after arrow after arrow. It's like, yeah, that number should be higher.
Yeah, it doesn't quite feel right in the film. In the movie, they get separated, but in a slightly different way. So Gimli, in the book, Gimli ends up in the catacombs and having to defend, the women and children down there, and there's a few other soldiers down there with him, but they actually get split up. So they split up in the movie, but it's like a ploy to give them more time to retreat rather than just being split up by the terrain.
But then there's stuff earlier before the battle starts is great. What's happening out there? Shall I describe it to you, or would you like me to find you a box? And then the fact that Gimli just starts, laughing hysterically at that, it's great because it just shows you how far their relationship has come.
I also loved, just to take it like super back to like, I love the look on Gimli's face when, like, at the very beginning, when they're surrounded by the Rohirrim and Éomer, basically says, "I would cut off your head, dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground." And Legolas immediately, and Gimli's like, all right. So that's like, there you're like, okay, maybe they are kind of becoming friends, but then it like comes full circle at that point, when you're like, oh yeah, they're good now. So yeah.
Just while we're on the subject of Gimli, I just want to have a little brag because, I met him.
Yay!
Oh. I'm not jealous at all.
At the Rings of Power premiere, he was
That's
on the red carpet. And he stopped and talked to us for quite a long time. John Rhys-Davies is quite tall in real life. He's not that tall. He's like a little shorter than me.
Yeah.
I don't think he is 6'1". He didn't seem 6'1". I don't know, maybe the red carpet was lower than the pens were, but
I'm also just incidentally glad that he's like still likes this stuff, because it was kind of like, it seemed like in the aftermath, after he had such a horrible experience with the makeup, all that kind of stuff, that he didn't really want much to do with it. And then now he's like kind of rearranging it, which makes me happy because
he always seemed very like effusive and glowing about the movies themselves, and if not his experience, in the makeup chair, I know, like, from day one he was always talking about what a miserable experience that was. But
he's the only one that didn't get the tattoo, right? His like body double went and got it, and all that kind of stuff. Like Brett, what's his name? I don't think he got
which I get.
I don't know. I don't, because I would have been like, put it right on there. But but I obviously respect his right to bodily autonomy and not to get any tattoos either. But yeah.
But no, I remember when and I love him for this. That's on the one hand, you could argue that it's a bit petty considering like how many awards Return of the King took home, but I also love him for it. He was at the One Ring Oscar party the night of the Oscar sweep, and he was like, yes, 11, not bad. And then he was like, though I don't know how you cannot nominate any of the actors. So like he says what's on his mind, and so so the fact that I think like before the first movie came out, he was even like telling like reporters and stuff, this is going to be bigger than Star Wars, and like Peter Jackson and all them were like, John, can you stop doing that? We want to keep expectations low. But yeah, no, it's
just the end of that whole, like, of the end of Helm's Deep, like the ride out and all this ride out with me and stuff is just, more, now for wrath, now for ruin, and the red dot, you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's just so good. So like, it's so good even before the big glory moment of Éomer, sort of like riding down the hill and Gandalf and everything. It's so good before that, because it's like, hell yes. I also do love the visual effect there. regardless of how realistic of them riding on the bridge and the orcs are just falling off the side, like they're just totally going down that little walkway and everyone's falling off the side. I don't know, it's definitely a cavalry advantage, but it's also it's also so grim, like how few of them are left at the end as well, like to actually make this charge. And obviously, like some of that is this is maybe just how many horses are left or anything, but yeah, it's
oh my God, Stephen is still with us.
Stephen, we love you.
I'm impressed, Stephen. I thought you'd have been passed out by now. Would be well deserved.
What tattoo are you guys getting?
Oh no! Don't take me putting that up as an agreement on my part.
No wonder you got so shirty about me being like he wouldn't get the tattoo.
Yeah,
I see.
No, it's not happening. Anyway, no, the thing that always cracks me up about that bridge shot, it's not that like the orcs and stuff falling off the sides or anything. It's the fact that I can always spot the second Legolas where they replaced Arwen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then there is that shot when they're down there fighting the orcs where you can spot Arwen in the background, which I'm always like, there's that remnant of
Arwen footage.
The old footage. Yeah. Like, I mean, and to be clear, like, obviously I think it was the correct decision not to go that route for the movie, but I still want to see those scenes because I want to see what would have been.
Totally.
But no, yeah, you were mentioning, the stuff before they ride out. And again, I have to mention again, like the language, it's just so beautiful. And you got an exchange that actually belongs to, I think it's Aragorn and Éomer in the books. Dan, correct me on that if I'm wrong. Let us draw swords together. Does that's an exchange between Aragorn and Éomer, isn't it?
Trying to remember. Yeah, possibly. Éomer is there with them in the books in the keep.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't show up. The character that shows up with Gandalf is a character that's not in the movies, called Erkenbrand.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Yeah.
Which just reminds me, it's so funny because in the books you get when the riders show up at the end of the battle, and you've got the Rohirrim soldiers shouting Erkenbrand, and that's what I always think of when in season 6 of Game of Thrones when the soldiers of the Eyrie show up, and there's that shot of that one like soldier going ugh, and raising up the flag or whatever. I always go Erkenbrand.
But they shout Helm as well, don't they? They shout Helm in the book as well. Who's a character we will see in the anime. Obviously, Helm's Deep is named after this character.
And watching this today had me thinking a lot about the anime. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. I know you're probably not excited about that at all, Aaron, right? I mean,
I'm gonna watch it. So, I'm gonna watch it.
A Rohan-centered piece of media probably doesn't interest you.
Animation, not my preferred medium, but I'm very excited for this one. So, yeah.
Yeah. But no, like the dialogue exchanges between Theoden and Aragorn, just when Aragorn's like, ride out with me, ride out and meet them to death and glory for Rohan, for your people. And then Gimli says, the sun is rising. And then you get the sunshine coming through, and then the echo of, Gandalf's voice.
Look, my coming. That out and just had him be more of a surprise. That kind of tips their hand, right?
Yeah, but you also, I get it because they're also putting that in there for the, there is a tendency to make sure you're hitting a note for the audience members who aren't paying very close attention. So
Also,
Yeah,
it kind
I
of it reinforces Gandalf as being like this guy that you can depend on and that he keeps his promise, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel it's like a note of characterization for him. It gives him some sort of heroic significance.
Sure.
What was I going to say? Oh, that the build up to that charge as well. I always feel like there's a scene that's missing there of them having a quick 5-minute discussion on who gets to be the one who blows the horn of Helm, and Gimli being like, "No, I want to blow it." Like,
well, he can't ride, so I mean, it's kind of the natural choice, right? So
no, he can't ride. I mean, we've seen him try to ride.
It's like Legolas is like, just hold on tighter this time. It'll be fine.
It's fine. You definitely won't fall off the bridge. Nobody's going to fall off the bridge, so it's totally fine. So
yeah. And also, there's always the joke of like, where'd the horses come from? The horses are there all of a sudden. It's like, let's have the scene of them gathering up. Like, we've had the horses, stock back there.
Let's what
bring
we
them
could.
out.
The horses were down there for the women and children to eat if the town got desperate, but we gotta have them now. So yeah.
But just, I mean, I get chills every time, like that entire sequence. When the horn gets blown in, and Theoden yells, "For Theolingas," and they ride out, and just, and that shot of Gandalf just, on top of, what would you call that?
Yeah.
The hill, but too much to be a hill.
It's borderline a sheer cliff, if anything.
Yeah.
It's very steep.
And especially
not walk down it.
Again, talking about the score, like there's a bit that was left out of the soundtrack release that when they show him, there's this burst of like choral singing. When he's revealed, and it's just like it reinforces he's like this angelic figure, coming to save them, and yeah, God, it's so great. I don't even care about the physics of them all riding.
No, I don't
down there. Like, it's so goddamn beautiful, and.
It's not wrong. It's a cliff, but it's still great.
It's like every time I've watched that, I'm always like, if there's anybody around me, I'm like, are you not watching? This is like the greatest thing ever created. Like, how are you not just sitting here with me with your jaw dropped in complete awe of this?
Yeah. They don't even really need the sun coming up, like, to sort of do, but it works still anyway. But like, I don't know. Again, I keep waxing rhapsodic about every like moment Bernard Hill makes it has a reaction to something. But I love Éomer. Like I love when he sees him up there and he can see what's going on, and I'm like, hell yeah. But even more so, like this is technically going into the next movie, but I absolutely adore that Theoden admits to Éowyn that it was not Theoden of Rohan who saved our people. You know what I mean? Like, I love this, like, this whole journey for him, like, really culminates in this, like, obviously it culminates in the end when he goes to save Gondor and stuff like that. But, like, that particular thing, like, him sort of admitting to her, like, I didn't really do this, like, is such an excellent character beat that I think really just follows on from, like, this whole thing of, like, the sort of having like not had your own mind and then sort of overcorrecting to having your own mind and then realizing that like you can fail and like all this kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know, it's wonderful. And I think Theoden is definitely one of the arcs that I like the most in the movies, regardless of whether or not it hews very closely to the books. So
yeah. And I mean, my philosophy on that has always been, we have the books and we have the movies. I can love both, and and there's strengths to both. But I would not, want to part with a single bit of, Theoden's character arc through these films because I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a really good interpretation of how he is in the books as well. I think.
Mhm.
I don't have any. Yeah, I don't have any real big criticisms of the way that he's portrayed in the movies from an adaptation
I
standpoint.
don't know why that obscurely makes me feel better, but it does. So
The 2-hour mark has crept up on me. I guess I'm not used to paying attention to to the time on these things. But I mean, there's so much to cover in these films. But is there like anything else you guys wanted to highlight that we haven't touched on?
I love I love the Ents at the end. Like I love their attack on Isengard. Like the dam breaking in the river, like release the river, like is one of my favorite shots in like the movie. Like basically, that's a miniature, right, John? From what they said
Yeah.
from them. Like I love that shot. I love it coming down. I love it flooding everything. I love it putting out the fires. Like I like it as a metaphor, obviously, for sort of nature coming back and reclaiming the the industry and all that kind of stuff. But I just like I don't know. Like I said, I like the larger metaphor in general, but I also just think it's well done. Like, yeah, Treebeard or that actually that happens a little bit earlier too. But yeah, so I really like that whole scene, and it's like I said, I like the and on fire running up to put himself out and all that kind of stuff once the water all comes down there. But you sort of don't like as someone who just watches the movies, you don't understand what a force the Ents are. Like you can kind of like, especially because Treebeard is so sort of reciting his poetry and gently cradling the hobbits to sleep and like all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like you don't sort of understand exactly like how destructive they can be. And then all of a sudden they're just absolutely wrecking shop. Like nobody is getting anywhere close to sort of defeating them and stuff. So it's I don't know. It was I really like that scene at the end as a counterpoint to like not a counterpoint, as sort of a companion to what's happening at Helm's Deep as well. So
That actually reminds me of a thought I had earlier, but then I got derailed and I forgot about it. I love hearing the editor of the film talk about how, like Peter Jackson was always advocating for more Treebeard Ent stuff in the movie because he liked how funny it was that they were just so boring. And the editor was like, "Yes, but I'm afraid it's just going to be boring."
Such a funny discussion to have.
well,
I just wanted to pick up on something from the chat. Guilty Undertaker is saying whether Huorns a thing in the film or was that just in the book? They are never mentioned. Like the word Huorn is never said, but those are the trees of Van Gorn Forest that are kind of a cross between Ents and trees, basically. So they are there at the end of the Helm's Deep battle because a Treebeard says at one point, I think in the movie, the trees have got business with the orcs.
Yeah, and that is an extended cut only thing, which I guess
I couldn't remember, but
which strikes me as funny because it's like in the theatrical, it's like, so where did those orcs run off to?
Totally. Right. Totally. But I also just love that, like, Aramir's like, stay back, like, don't go into the forest. And then it's just a bunch of rustling trees, and you're like, oh yeah. Like it's kind of funny, but it's a neat
well, but it's also in the sound effects there because you can hear the damage they're doing. Yes. But yeah, visually it is just a bunch of rustling trees.
I thought it was relatively clear what was happening there. I mean, I obviously knew the books already, so I don't know. But
yeah.
So yeah, that's the answer. Like they are there, but they're just not mentioned by name.
I also want to mention real quick the Arwen stuff, which I love, and especially the stuff where we get the flash forward of her at Aragorn's side. And yes, I'm going to mention again how annoyed I am that Peter Jackson changed the color of that scene for the 4K version because damn it. That's why I'm still watching my old Blu-ray. But it's just it's so beautiful, just the way, again, hearing the language used when Elrond is, saying what's going to happen. I can't. I'm searching for the exact words right now, but it's very poetic, and just the way the camera pulls back, and she's just there at his side, and all the stone and everything. It's one of the most breathtaking moments in the movie, but yeah, I just want to make sure we mentioned that. I just, even back when the movie came out, I was like, movies are not like this. They don't have this stunning visual, and emotional poetry, that these movies do. And it's just fantastic.
Even more than that, it's like a really emotional gut punch that
Yeah.
like you can, like he says, like basically like everything you wish for can come true, and like still you will be parted. Like it's an odd thing to have in a movie like this. Like, and I'm not saying odd in a bad way. I'm saying it's unusual to have something that sort of reminds you, like, she's gonna just linger there for forever after he dies. Like it's not a happy ending. So that then even in the end, when it is this sort of happy ending, you're like, okay, but like then still there's like all of this other stuff. And that might be Elrond putting the most negative possible spin on it. Clearly they have a child and, all that other kind of stuff that she would have to live for, I guess. Although I know elves and their emotions and all that kind of stuff go very deep, and they can die of grief and different things like that. But like, I don't know. It's one of the things that I like, that I love about these movies is the sort of way that they put stuff in larger context like that. Like the deep sense of history, or the larger, like the dead marshes, like how there's really no, they go through the dead marshes and it's this sort of history and all of this larger context into like what you're going through. And then you come into something like this, that's this romantic love story. And they're like, yeah, but this is how it's going to end, though. It's her in this beautiful veil walking beneath these dead trees, So it's wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful emotional sequence, but it's unusual for a movie like this, I think, for them to remind you that, like, even though there is a happy ending, this isn't exactly the happiest of endings here. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's like in the Beren and Luthien story in the Silmarillion, right? Which is the parallel to the Arwen and Aragorn story. It's introduced as being a tragedy, even though, in a sense, it kind of ends well because they succeed in their quest and end up living together and marrying and having a child. And but from an Elvish point of view, it's kind of a tragedy because Luthien gives up her immortality, and so it's the same kind of feeling behind the Arwen romance in The Lord of the Rings, which in the book is, as many of you will know, is kind of given very short amount of kind of exposition. It's not really a big focus of the storyline, but the film adapted that quite well.
And I think
portraying it that way.
The extended version of The Fellowship has the Lay of Luthien in it as well, like that has the Beren and Luthien stuff as well. That you can, I don't know, I was sort of bummed that was cut from the theatrical film, because I think it does give more context to Aragorn and Arwen's relationship, like what happened to her while she died. Like that's not the whole story at the end of the day, but I think it adds richness, I think, to Aragorn's and Arwen's relationship. So
yeah, I did find the Elrond's dialogue for that scene, which I did just want to read because it's some of the most beautiful stuff ever. I just, again, the fact that you hear stuff like this in a major motion picture, whether by the sword or the slow decay of time, Aragorn will die, and there will be no comfort for you, no comfort to ease the pain of his passing. He will come to death, an image of the splendor of the kings of men in glory, undimmed before the breaking of the world. But you, my daughter, you will linger on in darkness and in doubt, as nightfall in winter that comes without a star. Here you will dwell, bound to your grief, under the fading trees, until all the world is changed and the long years of your life are utterly spent. I mean, shit.
Mm-hmm. Brutal. Yeah.
But and then to have that, it's one thing just to read it there, but to have that accompanied with those beautiful visuals and Howard Shore's, heart-achingly beautiful music, which is the Even Star track on the soundtrack. It's just, there's a reason why these films are still and forever my favorite movies of all time. It's just, even as we've been highlighting stuff that's less than perfect, throughout the stream.
I think we've been highlighting it. We've been talking about it. But
yeah. But it's funny because, you poked fun at me, Dan, on another stream where you were like, I got you to admit that there are flaws. And it's like, it's this balance where I'll like acknowledge individual imperfections, but taken as a whole, the movies are perfect.
Right.
So.
Right. Totally. That's absolutely how I feel. Like there's a ton of them. Like we're talking about all the different things, like the in the Fellowship when the ring wraith rides out, and there's like a light behind him, and Peter Jackson's like, we don't actually know where this light came from. We just thought it looked really nice. And I was like, it does. It's a beautiful shot. I would never wish it away in spite of the fact that you don't know where that's coming from. And they do that with a lot of things. The ends at the end when he's like, is it realistic they would all be immediately there the second that Treebeard yells? No, it isn't. But we didn't want to have some sort of break where they wait around for 3 days. And I was like, fair, you got it. I'm on board. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then, Return of the King rolls around and we do still have Denethor's, 1,500-mile run.
I don't know. Again, we all love these movies, obviously, but sometimes this stuff is my favorite. Again, I still have never stopped laughing about Cheech and Chong, Radagast, and Gandalf from our Hobbit discussion. So that's still my favorite. Still one of my favorites. So yeah, we have fun.
But I hate to end on this note because this sounds like I'm being a little grouchy, but I'm going to go ahead and just try to turn it into like a positive thing to say about the movie. I was watching it today, and I think I've talked in the Slack about my occasional issues I have with my dad. And today I was rewatching Two Towers, and I got one of his predictable, don't you ever get tired of watching this? And the answer to that question is no, never, ever, ever.
Nope.
Of course, I responded by saying, don't you ever get tired of asking me that? To which he shockingly said, I don't think I've ever asked you that before. And guys, it was all I could do to stay composed. But I will never, ever tire of these movies. They are just, I'm not, I'm not unbiased. They came at a very particular moment in my life where, the things are weighted in the, direction of these movies for being some of my most cherished. They are my favorite movies of all time, and where Two Towers ranks, amongst the other two, I don't have an answer for myself. Today I was watching Two Towers, so today maybe it's my favorite, and tomorrow if I continue on with Return of the King, that'll be my favorite tomorrow. So.
Yeah, I don't rewatch them as often as you do, I don't think. But I also could never tire of them. Like I don't even get close to getting tired of them. I notice new things about them every time, and they are timeless. So I don't know how you could even really ask that.
The amount of times that I finish Return of the King and just go right back to Fellowship is like a lot. Sometimes and I'm like, hey, let's just start it again. So yeah.
And I do also want to say, again, God, now I'm going, through all the different emotions. I just tackled being annoyed and now I'm gonna go into sadness. But like, things have been great lately for me, and what I've discovered is that there are certain types of movies and shows that I'm not in really a great position to watch right now because certain emotions get triggered, and and sometimes it's just not the time to be feeling certain feelings. But the great thing about Lord of the Rings is that these movies are very healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, like, even when the sad parts of Return of the King come around, it still fills my heart with like hope and gladness and joy. So at the end of the day, that's what's so great about these movies, is that they heal. And yes, I will watch them again and again as many times as I damn well please.
They allow me to rest a lot of times, like whether it's my mind or my, like my emotions or something like that. Like they give you space to rest, I think, sometimes. And there are times in your life when you have emotions that you don't want to feel, that can be more valuable than anything, when something allows you to rest like that. So yeah.
Middle Earth, it feels like a safe place for me,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like a world with purpose that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the real world can feel meaningless, or it can feel, you can get cynical about the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
For all kinds of different reasons. We mentioned elections earlier briefly. When you start thinking about stuff like that, retreating into Middle Earth can help as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel that way more so about the books, but the movies do capture that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I feel that way equally, and about both the books and the movies, and which is why it's all about finding the time. I probably would have started if my life over the past several months had been a little less hectic, but I am very much looking forward to diving back into the books, because I have those wonderful audiobooks by Andy Serkis, and I'm planning on like doing a side-by-side, like sitting down with the books, but also listening to his narration and going through them that way. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And I feel like it's going to be a very joyous journey, because I still remember my first experience reading those books, and just especially when I got to the end of Return of the King, and it's indescribable, like what I felt when I was finishing those books. I don't want to get too overly emotional about it, but I just remember, like, I was, there were sort of tears of joy, not tears like jokingly because I had no more to read or anything like that, but because I knew that I had gone through something profound with this story. And so I'm looking forward to experiencing that again. And I love the fact that, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of this movie, and it's like 20 years. It's, it's been that long, and I am still as in love with these stories as I have ever been. So, and I think I actually managed to bring it all back around to at the end there with the whole 20th anniversary theme. So we're gonna
cut it at a clean 218 here.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so Dan, if there's anything else you want to say, or just tell the people again what you have coming up.
Nothing more about the films that I want to add at this point. I just check me out on YouTube if you're not familiar. It's Voice of Geekdom is the channel. I have a lot of content semi-regularly. I'm starting to get back to it more, but I'm pretty busy at the moment, and so there hasn't been much content recently. But I've got a video coming out at some point in the next couple of weeks on Gil-galad, the hiking of the elves in the Second Age. And I've got some content coming out on the One Ring RPG, where I'm doing a sort of 5-part mini series of like podcasts where I'm playing through the starter set of a tabletop RPG. And so, yeah, definitely check that out, and look me up on social media if you're following me on Twitter or Instagram or all the rest of it. So.
Cool. Aaron, anything you want to say?
No, just thanks for having me. I always have the best time on here with you guys. I think this is probably what our 4th or 5th stream that we've done together on Lord of the Rings, and it never gets any less fun. So I was thrilled when I heard on too, but yeah, I was like, John and Steven for sure. I was actually, this is such a bummer because I was like, oh my god, I'm so looking forward to hearing what Steven has to say. He's not usually in these conversations, and then I was like, oh, wah wah. So sorry, Steven, love you. I was looking forward to your thoughts, but yeah, so no, but thanks. You guys are great to talk with about this thing that we all love, and I have a great time all the time. So
yeah, just. Before closing out, this is not an official announcement of anything, but I am looking to get back into streaming over on my channel next year. This has been one hell of a hectic year, and I'm looking forward to starting next year fresh. And but I have to work out a couple things. I'm thinking about revamping some stuff for the look of the channel a little bit. Just, fresh start. So I will, I'll let you guys know what's going on with that. And I'd love to have both of you back on the channel talking about, some different movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Steven reminding us he's on Stanry's Twitch.
Yep. Make sure you guys
6:30 p.m. Central Time.
Go ahead, tune in and watch that. Steven, if you have I don't know if there's a link for that or anything.
No, with Twitch, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. But yeah, so and next week, I guess the plan is we're just gonna hop on. I don't exactly know what's going on with me on Christmas Day, but I assume I'll probably be able to join in on that. And I'll just sit here and show off Christmas gifts that I receive and that I've bought for myself over the past couple weeks. But thank you all for tuning in. Always real joy to talk Lord of the Rings. Thank you, Steven, for making it as much as you could. And thank you, Aaron and Dan. It's always, it's always a bunch of fun just to get on here and talk Lord of the Rings with you guys. One would think we got it all out of our system,
Never.
with multiple 4-hour streams, but apparently not. Which, is just delightful. The more I can talk about these movies, the better. Okay. And I've already stretched this out now to 2:22. So before we get to 2:23, I will say, be safe and be excellent to each other.
Happy holidays, everybody.
All right. Merry Christmas, guys. Bye.
Merry Christmas.